I have a relative that just passed away, and I brought I hate those things when you go to the funeral, you get like the little program. I don't know what it's called, but that thing. And I brought it to work just because I wanted to continue to mourn, and she was very close to me. But anyway, it was on my desk, and somebody was like, "Oh, can I see it?" And I said, "Yes." And she was a member of NASA. And they were like, wow, they didn't know. Wow, they had Black women at NASA. And I thought it before I got angry to reply the way I wanted to reply, it hit me, you know, got a very valid point. It is just something that we don't see, and we don't see enough of in technology and science and engineering, mathematics. And we have to do a better job of being more inclusive, because there's a huge talent pool out here that we're not tapping into.
Excellent. Well said, Wendy. Keri, I mentioned, Living HR's, focus on, talking about these issues with all your customers, but including integrators, especially for this context. Can you talk a little bit about maybe build off of what Wendy had to say, the importance of, building those strategies into, business and culture and practices?
Yeah, I want to also, first of all, Wendy, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I appreciate you sharing that story, because I think it's a really relevant one.
Thank you.
One of the reasons why the experience of individuals matters so much when you're doing recruiting and selection. If you just take what you just said at surface value, that, there aren't a lot of people currently in this integrator space that are people of color, or that have a membership to a different group or identity. And so therefore, if you use experience as the criteria, it's going to be very hard to find somebody with the experience, because there aren't people in the space, right? So you've got to really look at exactly what Wendy just did with Sleep Number, and what are the capabilities that somebody has, not necessarily the direct experience. And if you open up your talent pipeline that way to broadening the perspective, you're automatically going to get more diversity, because you're not only hiring people that have already done it before, because nobody's already done it before yet. There's such a small number of people that have been in this integration space. So where are you going to find them? It's not within the space. We've got to go outside, and then we've got to build those capabilities from industry adjacent, to our earlier point. When you think about the strategy of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm so fortunate. We have an incredible diversity, equity, and inclusion team here at livingHR that does incredible work in this space. And one of the things that we really try to do is make sure that we think of all the different dimensions of diversity. When somebody talks about diversity, they often kind of leave it with just race and gender. And there's so many different dimensions. It's socioeconomic, it's religious, it's your education, it's your marital status, it's your physical abilities, it's your sex assigned at birth, it's your political beliefs, it's your appearance. I mean, there's so much in all of those different dimensions that diversity is very complex, right? And so we can't boil it down, as much as I think that we are, to just race and gender, and think that we're going to be able to really truly create non-homogeneous organizations. So one of the big things is to really broaden your definition of what diversity means. I do think it's really important, that said, to make sure that we're making the effort to support and develop and give opportunity and access to opportunity to those that have been historically the most marginalized. And so when the more intersections that somebody has on all those different dimensions of diversity, the less access they've had, which brings me to the equity conversation. And you can see that little line there. Equity and equality are not the same thing. And so there's always this perception out there that drives me crazy, that equity is often perceived as like some sort of free ride or a handout. But the reality is that there's barriers to success for a lot of individuals that unfortunately society and the workplace just hasn't really acknowledged. And so in order to really create equity within your organization, it's not a pie, right? Like, equity doesn't mean that there's a limit to the amount of equity that we have. It doesn't need to take away from anyone. It's just about leveling the playing field.